Ever decided someone hates you because they didn't say hi? Now imagine running a company that way.
Welcome to the Slog Pod, where we examine the bad thinking patterns that shape your day, your organization's culture, and our world's worst decisions.
So I can think of plenty of examples that include these sorts of things. So there's times when I assumed a colleague might have been angry because they were quiet, only to learn later they had a migraine or something like that. I can think of times when leaders assumed a team was lazy when it was for lots of reasons. They didn't understand expectations, other things were going on, there were other activities or interactions between different teams that made them not understand exactly what was going on. There's plenty of examples that point out what we're talking about today.
Mm-hmm. And I'm picking up on a theme. It sounds like assumptions. We act on those more often than we do what's real.
We do. Absolutely, we do.
Mm-hmm.
So let's break down some of the, really problematic thought patterns or just kind of, I don't know how to exactly explain it, distortions that we might have in our daily lives. This is just a short list of some of the things that we feel are pretty common. So one, mind reading. So walking through the day thinking, you know what people are thinking, even though they don't say this. I run into this in therapy with individuals all the time. They think I'm incompetent, for example, or something like that, even though it wasn't directly said. But that's what you take to heart. Jumping to conclusions, I think we all know what that is. Deciding an outcome before basically the evidence is in. Catastrophizing, turning small setbacks into imagined disasters, black and white, that polarized thought process. For example, if it isn't perfect, it's worthless. Should statements, they should know better, which often leads to resentment. Emotional reasoning, I feel incompetent, therefore I must be incompetent. It's emotional. Personalization, blaming yourself for things outside of your control. These are just a short list of many of the problematic thoughts that we can run into regularly. So basically, these patterns do several things. They increase anxiety, conflict, and paralysis with us individually. They reinforce further distortions, beliefs, decisions, and they can ultimately cause new problematic behavior. Aaron Beck, who is the father of CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, would say these thoughts often feel true. This leads to emotional distress, behavior avoidance, or problematic coping mechanisms. The brain basically does this because it prefers certainty over accuracy.
So basically, our brain is like a bad manager with no data, but lots of opinions.
Yeah, that's one way to put it.
Okay.
Exactly. It doesn't stop with us. Organizations do pretty much the same.
They do. So mind reading. Organizations will do that with markets.
Sure.
Organizations will mind read markets, basically making decisions based on assumptions about what customers want, but they never actually test that. They're just assuming what the customer wants. Jumping to conclusions in hiring. You see that a lot. Dismissing candidates based on a gut feeling or a single data point. Catastrophizing. That often comes with change. Believing any disruption will ruin the company, so we're not going to change. Should statements, we see those a lot. Employees should be engaged because we're paying them so well, because we have a generous PTO policy. What's the other? Emotional reasoning. So leadership feels anxious about change, so then they decide the organization isn't ready. And they're reasoning that that's why we can't do anything. And you're right. I think these mental gymnastics that we play or that organizations do, those can lead to some poor outcomes, not only for the individuals within those organizations, but for the organization as a whole.
Yeah, as we talk about this, we kind of got into the data thing. So here's some data points to consider and some research. From the National Institute of Mental Health, over 19% of adults in the U.S. experienced an anxiety disorder in the past year, often maintained by these unchallenged patterns. I think that's true. And I would say anecdotally, that's what I run across in individual therapy with people. McKinsey from 2010, in the case for behavioral strategy, Said cognitive biases, such as jumping to conclusions over confidence, confirmation bias, significantly degrade decision quality in organizations. And companies using systematic bias reduction strategies see a 6 to 7% higher ROI on strategic decisions. Interesting. Harvard Business Review from 2016 in Outsmart Your Own Biases said managers adapt to snap judgments about employees based on limited data, leading to biased performance evaluations and promotion decisions. Again, interesting. And from one of my favorites, Daniel Kahneman from 2011, Thinking Fast and Slow. Humans are wired for rapid assumption-based thinking, which is efficient but often inaccurate. Societies that fail to implement system-level checks on these patterns repeat poor decisions like financial bubbles, political panic, ineffective policies. Interesting, right? And that's just a quick synopsis of what we came across when we were looking at different stuff that these problematic patterns impact.
Yeah. And I think that supports what we're saying here.
Mm-hmm.
The evidence is there. There are some real world outcomes, many of them poor outcomes that are happening because of this tendency to engage in that problematic type of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if we zoom out even further, just to the larger culture, which we're always seeking to do.
Yep.
Take politics, for example. How many times are we seeing people, not only voters, but also our representatives or people who are running for office, are mind reading the other side's motives, assuming something's malicious when maybe it's not,
Mm-hmm.
and then just outright refusing to even collaborate because of that mind reading they've already engaged in. What's another example you could think of?
Yeah, social media, basically jumping to conclusions without the nuance, dogpiling, that sort of thing.
Yeah,
I think that's a very common thing in our macro culture right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And speaking of the macro culture, we'll see the catastrophizing happen.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a minor economic signal, people blow that way out of proportion, or a shift in culture, maybe attitudes about a certain hot button issue. And then that just gets catastrophized, the slippery slope,
Mm-hmm.
for the slipperiest of slope.
Absolutely.
Kind of thinking we see a lot.
Yeah. And lastly, I think another example, healthcare, emotional reason driving policy panic instead of basically a measured response. We run down one lane or the other instead of finding that measure.
Yeah. Yeah. We do that a lot. So moving on to our solutions discussion,
Mm-hmm.
some questions maybe we should ask.
Oftentimes when I'm in individual therapy with people, I look at these problematic patterns as more of red flags.
Okay.
Rather than just something we need to take care of. We just need to be aware that we do this and that those are red flags to say, let's re-examine how we're feeling. And if we have bigger distortions, bigger cognitions, decisions that are happening, belief that we're really focusing on because we're mind reading, because we're jumping to a conclusion, because we're overgeneralizing. I always, the red flag thing is huge, and I see it every day in probably every single person I talk to. Yeah.
So in that individual therapy setting, I would assume you're trying to ask the questions so that the individual can start seeing what the patterns are.
Sure.
It's just identifying that the pattern is happening, that they're engaged in it.
Usually if you do it once, you're probably doing it often. So if you're mind reading, you're probably walking through life mind reading others, or trying to assuming what they think of you or what's going on in their head when you don't know.
Right. So when you identify and name that pattern, what's the next logical step there?
Well, just what you think it is, probably to clarify it, to ask the questions, to use the data, to slow down making your decisions, to really jump in and see what's going on. Why am I doing this? Is it providing something for me? Is it reinforcing a belief, a decision, probably a poor decision or not accurate decision? So what's going on there?
So it almost sounds like you're asking people to take a step back from their feelings for a minute and analyze this a bit more objectively.
Again, I think that's connecting the feelings to the pattern that we're talking about, to the overgeneralizing. And I don't think that's necessarily the case. It's just a red flag. Again, it's a flag. It's not to say this is absolutely wrong, because oftentimes we make assumptions and we're absolutely correct in those assumptions.
Good point.
So it's not that they're always wrong. It's just to say, I'm doing this.
Gotcha.
And I'm probably doing it often. And I need to be careful when I overgeneralize or I make assumptions or I mind read or whatever that is, all these things that we've discussed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can see how this is happening in organizations also, right? So again, as we're talking about solutions, ask more questions, identify when you're doing it. If you're a leader, whatever that is, identify if you're doing those patterns, and then start asking the questions. Find the data. Look at your feedback loops instead of making the assumptions. Check with others.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking systems, so it's not one person, it's others. So if you're making the assumption, you come across this, or even I would say, if you're in that group, you're in that system, you're in a team, if you hear someone else making an assumption, for example, or mind reading, call it out. Ask, why are you doing that? What's that doing? Is that accurate?
That's the question. Bingo. I think that's the most important question. Is that accurate? I think it's a great open-ended question, because now you can have the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you can start bringing data to the table.
Absolutely. And this seems to me, as we talk about redeveloping culture, and that's such an important point to get people on board. We're talking about system shifts now, not just an individual, but trying to get everyone on board so that you can openly ask that question and say, wait a minute, I heard you jump to a conclusion there. I heard you make an assumption. Is that right? Do you have the data to support that? If not, are you reinforcing a decision that might not or shouldn't be made because you're doing that? These are tremendous culture shifts, I think, in most organizations. Tough to get to.
And I can't think of too many organizations, if any, that I've had those types of conversations. Mostly it's just head nods, and there's assumptions happening there too. I assume what someone's saying must be true without checking or challenging it. That's just my default setting.
Yeah.
And I would imagine a lot of people go into those interactions that way.
Yeah. I would argue it's even cancerous. Because if one person starts doing that, you can imagine everyone else starts feeling like, well, I can jump to a conclusion. I can mind read others, and I can use that to make decisions. Right? I think what we're asking people to do, or maybe all of us should do, is create space for that. Ask what that's about, test it, and see what happens. Right? We're building psychological safety so that you can challenge any of those poor narratives. We're talking about a lot of different narratives here. So it's hard to really engage with that. But
yeah. And I think from the cultural standpoint, again, zooming back out, looking at the way we handle media, the way we consume it, asking ourselves, are we fully literate in how we're consuming that? And I think what that can help us do, if we ask ourselves that question, or hold ourselves maybe to a higher standard of media literacy, it gives us the ability to start taking on and combating some of those distorted narratives or stories that are perpetuating out there. Really, I think the central question for a culture at large is, are we valuing curiosity over certainty? Because it seems to me certainty is what seems to be the preferred.
I recoil when you say that, because that's a lot for a culture to move, I think. I mean, that's partially why we're doing this.
Is to try
to get culture to do exactly that. To ask the questions, to be curious rather than seeking certainty, rather than seeking reinforcement, to be curious about that. And I think that's a big move. So,
yeah. Well, then I guess my follow-up question to that, understanding that potential, would be, could we as individuals, as part of this larger culture, could we start practicing collective cognitive restructuring so we can start challenging those cycles that we get engaged in?
Can we? That's a big question. I don't know if we can. You really want to know. I don't know that I have faith that our culture can do that. Again, I feel like that's why we're doing this. Can we practice that collective cognitive restructuring, or whatever that is? Wow. I mean, we're asking to change some serious patterns in our culture here. It's hard enough when I'm dealing it with an individual. Think about, now we're dealing with organizational systems and the macro culture as a whole, and we're asking everyone to do that. That seems a big wave to change and a lot of momentum to get going the other direction.
Right.
Doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, we can't even agree whether or not the earth is flat. So you're right. That seems like a pretty tall task.
It's a tall order. I know what I'm asking for, but on the other hand, it seems reasonable. Why wouldn't we ask the questions? Why wouldn't we call out, hey, man, you're jumping to a conclusion. You're making an assumption. Are you sure about that?
Well, you do that all the time to me.
Well,
I mean,
I think you and I have created that culture. Our system is built on that.
Oh God, our system is something else.
Our system is built on challenging that.
It is.
Those thoughts. And that seems healthy. I mean, that's mostly of what we're doing here.
Yeah. And I think we can acknowledge that didn't happen overnight. That's been over the course of 20 plus years of tenuous friendship.
What is how to say the least. Absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, it's hard to say that. And I know I'm asking a lot of our organizations, of our systems, of our macro culture, especially, but it also seems easy. Ask the damn question. Just call it out. No, that's an assumption. No, you're mind reading. Those people aren't thinking that. There is no malicious intent. How do you know there's malicious intent? Right. Ask the questions. I think it's awesome that we can do that. So let's do it.
Yeah, it's a tool we just rarely use.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I guess tying it all together, just in closing, I think it's important just for all of us to remember that you're not your thoughts, and your organization isn't its assumptions either. We're so much more. And if we want healthier systems, I think we have to start with healthier thinking, which means doing exactly what you said.
Yeah.
Asking the questions.
Both as individuals, in our organizations, and throughout our macro culture, and being okay with doing that. I know I'm asking a lot.
Well, and that's why it's a slog.
That's why it's a slog. Well, we appreciate you listening. If you're interested, we've got some merch available on our website, www.theslogcode.com. Again, thanks for listening, and cheers.
Cheers.
So much fun.
Kenny and I had that discussion, by the way.
What?
So why do I always do that? Kenny says, because it's fun.
What do you always do?
Talking about fucking with you.
Yeah, a lot of fun.
Why do I always do that? Because it's fun.
Ready?
Yep.